Hello and welcome to CJB Games, Cameron here, and today I have another devlog for the horror game I'm solo creating called Groundskeeping, a first-person multiplayer hotel maintenance horror game. In today's devlog we're mostly continuing with the creation of the garage, and firstly the draining system that will be used on the exterior to collect the rainwater. As usual we can begin making this in Blender using the existing environment for scale. And I'm also hoping this asset will give the exterior of the house a much needed added detail. I modelled the interior of the pipe right at the bottom, but only up until the player couldn't see it anymore, then the interior does not exist. This is a good way to save on polycam while also making the asset look a bit more interesting. With the model created, we can quickly add a texture and begin working on the next asset. These next two will be joint door frames that will house the two doors that go from the garage to the rest of the house. This was a simple task, and when I had finished one, I could just simply duplicate it and tweak the scaling and location for the second one. As I was feeling extra motivated, I also created the collision using simple boxes in Unreal. The texture was also simple, with a wood base and a chipped white paint on top. With a few new parts of the garage done, we can turn our attention to improving the game loop of groundskeeping. One thing I want is for the player to be able to work towards something in the game so they're more motivated to play. This will be in the form of a store where the players can buy things like cool items or hats. So for this to work I'll need a currency system in the game. I don't want the player using real life money though, so this will all be earned from having fun in the game and doing tasks. The easiest way I can think to do this is to divide the score the player already gets in the end by 10 each time, and the resulting number will be how much the player earns that session. The first thing to do, then, is to create all blueprint groundwork that will get this system working and saving. There also needs to be risk involved, so I want the player to lose half of all their cash whenever they die. Which means the next thing I need to do is create a level that the player will go to anytime they die during a session. For now, this level will just display a simple widget explaining on how much money they have left. This level will then go to the name level, where the player will decide what to call their next new groundskeeper. With all that working, I also need the player to be able to see how much money they have whenever they're in the main menu. So I've created a quick overlay in the corner of the screen that displays the player's name and how much money they currently have. And finally for this task, I need to create the level that shows how much money they earned from this session if they didn't die during it. Again, this will be a simple widget that displays the score of the player and how much money they've earned directly below it. It's all very rudimentary for now, but it works and it helps the game loop, which is the main thing. So with a little more of this loop fleshed out, we can move back to creating more of the garage. Specifically continuing with the back wall of the garage, so this is the wall that connects to the rest of the house. It's clear that this part needs to be added now, because when I get rid of the current white box I've built, it lets the player see inside the garage as the brick texture is only one-sided. With that done, the next thing is the skirting board that will run along the edge of the room. This piece took a while to model, as there are a number of indents within the room, but I'm happy with the outcome. I also think now is the perfect time to take a little break and have a look at all we've created so far and see if it all fits together. So far I'm happy with the progress, and the next thing I want to add is the metal holders that the shutter doors will rest upon when they're opened. This will be a great thing to add, as it will stop the doors looking as though they're simply defying gravity. This took a little bit of tweaking here and there, because I needed to make sure that they lined up perfectly with the existing garage doors. The texture ended up being a shiny metal, with a layer of chipped paint on top. Another thing this map quickly needs is its first source of exterior lighting. Similarly to the lamppost I made ages ago, I want there to be an asset that will automatically light up when the sun goes down. For this I created some spotlights that will sit on the exterior brick wall of the garage. The model was simple and I spent a fair amount of time fiddling with the settings of the light to make sure it looked just right. With a nice dirty rubber texture added, we can move on to the next asset, which is the border of the crawl space. Just like with the door borders, this asset will house the crawl space that the player and enemy can interact with. The model didn't take too long to create, neither did the texture as well. Again, that's lots of assets I've created, so I want to turn my attention back to the weather system. As it stands, the rain and wind is just as loud, regardless of whether the player is inside or not. So I've added a couple of hitboxes on all of the entrances and exits, so that when the player passes through them, the volume of the weather effects will slowly be decreased or increased depending on if they're going inside or outside. And if the player also ventures deep underground, the weather system will become almost silent, and this will help add to the sort of believability of it. Now that the hitboxes have all been placed, we can create our last asset for this devlog. This one's going to be a brick pillar, and once again, its main job is to help the exterior of the garage look a bit more interesting. I quickly brought it into Engine using the same brick material I've always been using, and that about rounds it off for this devlog. I'm very happy with the progress of the garage so far, and how it's all coming together nicely. Thank you all for watching. If you want to keep up to date with the progress of this game, then consider subscribing, and I shall see you all in the next devlog.